If you thought the property market was unpredictable now, the next 12 to 18 months are set to see prices go into free fall. Property values are tipped to drop by 15% by the end of next year. And while it sounds like good news for first home buyers, rising interest rates will make it even harder to find a place to buy. I spoke with Alice Stoltz from Domain a short time ago. Well, Alice, thank you so much for joining us. We know that the forecasts have been pretty wide of the mark, and I know that even the Reserve Bank got it completely wrong. But what are we looking at in terms of property prices?
Look, I think there's a lot of noise in the market at the moment, and one thing that can help is to look at what's happened historically. When we look at what's happened in terms of peaks and troughs, historically in the past, the troughs have actually been less profound than what the peaks have been. Now, remembering that Sydney and Melbourne in particular over the past couple of years have experienced over 34% price growth. So we've seen a real sort of golden era for many homeowners, definitely not so much for buyers. But what we are now seeing with interest rates rising and inflation also racing away from us in many parts is the slowdown of property prices. Now, for as long as interest rates rise, prices will continue their decline and to soften. In terms of what's happening around the country, Melbourne and Sydney are really leading that charge. We're definitely seeing the biggest dips in prices there. And the thing about Melbourne and Sydney is that they kind of have all the highs, but they also experience the lows. And that is now rippling out to the other markets around Australia. We're seeing it happen in Queensland and in Perth and Adelaide as well, and also even Tassie, which has been a really strong market. So we're seeing that slowdown happen, but not as profoundly as what we're seeing in Melbourne and Sydney.
And what about outside the big centres? What about for regional areas?
It's an interesting one, regional areas, because they've been so sort of seduced, those buyers, by the tree and sea change opportunities, as well as affordability issues. So lifestyle buyers who kind of during the pandemic sort of felt that now is the time to make the leap and work from home or work wherever they wanted to work and basically move out to sort of have this wonderful way of life, have most of them have done that change. So most of our tree and sea changes, that change has washed through the markets, which is why we've seen extraordinary growth regionally. The other pool of buyers there, though, has been the buyers who are really kind of under the pressure with affordability. Now, they're the ones that are being priced out of capital cities and are being pushed further and further to where they can actually afford to buy.
So price falls across the board. And every market, of course, is different. Every capital city is different. Adelaide and Perth, what are they looking at?
Adelaide has been a white-hot market and has seen extraordinary growth and has seen the strongest price growth in the past year and on quarter. It's been quite remarkable what's happened in Adelaide, and a lot of it has been driven by people in Adelaide wanting to move out to the regions, as well as interstate buyers who kind of realise what a wonderful way of life you can have in Adelaide for so much less money. However, even that market is moderating somewhat. We're seeing the same in Perth at the moment. It's funny though, in Perth, that was once the cheapest market in the country, and that is now no longer the case. Darwin is now the cheapest market in the country, and Perth has sort of lost its place in that regard.
And is there much of a difference between home prices, in terms of property, and apartments? Because often the apartments and houses have quite differences when it comes to that price factor.
Property types are a really interesting piece to look at when it comes to property prices, because during the pandemic, apartments were completely on the nose. Nobody wanted a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. Everybody wanted space. And now we've seen the reversal of that. So what's driving that is affordability. With house prices seeing such significant rises over the past couple of years, apartments really came into vogue as sort of an option that was a much more affordable place for people to be able to buy into. So what we've seen now, though, is apartment prices are racing and homes are actually dropping in value.
And for renters, because if prices are coming down, we know in the rental market it's very tough. Prices have been going very high from a rental point of view. Why are they still finding it hard if the property market's cooling a bit?
The rental market is so tough and severe at the moment for renters. And basically what we're seeing is investors or landlords passing on their mortgage increase onto tenants. And really, if you're an investor in the market, they're just so wooed and seduced by the fact they can actually keep hiking up rents, knowing the vacancy rates are at all-time record lows.
And the other factor too is first-home buyers, because they would be licking their lips and thinking, hurrah, prices are coming off in some markets. Adelaide, obviously a different story, but if prices are coming down, surely that's going to help first-home buyers getting in.
Look, you've got a feel for first home buyers, because even with the softening of prices at the moment, just ask any first home buyer how tough it is to enter the market and you'll just see the expression on their face, usually just come right to the fore of how challenging it is. You know, we've got record amounts of times to save for a house when it comes to first home buyers. And now they've been a bit more of a quandary, because do they either go now while interest rates are what they are, knowing they're going to rise further, or do they sit on their hands, wait for prices to potentially drop, but be able to borrow less and potentially more competition in the market? So it's actually a really challenging time for first home buyers. My advice to them is do your research, speak to qualified professionals who can help guide you on what is the best solution for you, and also look at areas where you're seeing potentially strong price growth that you will actually be able to afford to get into right now.
And I guess the big question that everyone is grappling with when it comes to interest rates, whether to fix or with variable, and whether crystal ball gazing, they'll keep changing. What's your tip?
Look, it's interesting. The CBA came out the other day, and their interpretation of the RBA minutes that they released the other week from their latest meeting was that interest rates might actually sort of level out in another couple of months' time. I think watching what the banks do and how much they're passing on, you really need to be speaking to a mortgage broker at the moment to get the best rate for you. But having said that, homeowners are really in the driver's seat when it comes to negotiating to a bank. And if you're not speaking to a mortgage broker, you're really not doing yourself a favour, because those banks want you knowing they're going to be getting more from you in the years to come.
Yeah, well, if you don't ask, you don't get. That is true.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Alice, thank you so much.
Thanks, Deb.